Hey guys, welcome back. This is going to be part 2 of the alien mask sculpt. I'm going to try to just move it along to a point where I can start printing a small version of it. I don't know if I'll get there this morning, but I'm going to shoot for it. And honestly, it doesn't matter if it's perfect for that. It's going to be fun, and if it sucks, I will go back and redo it later. I just want to get a review on that printer. Photos Media Engine add-on just got installed. Check it out. Cool. So weird pop-up on my computer. As I mentioned with my previous videos, if you like this video, my next video might be totally different. I like to cover lots of topics, so if you're thinking of subscribing, please keep that in mind so you're not shocked when I post something completely random. Speaking of randomness, I started going through these files from my previous phone, and there are tons of videos that I've taken on there of everything. And at the time, I may not have been able to share them or didn't for whatever reason. Like, I think my previous video was one that I took, and then I was like self-conscious because I was having these focus issues with that camera. And I was like, oh, everybody's gonna yell at me for the focus. And then I just never re-recorded it. So I found it's like, yeah, it's not that bad. I'll just post it because I don't feel like I'll probably ever do it again. I've got heaps of random videos. So there's probably going to be a somewhat steady flow of random older videos, as much as like 2 or 3 years old, popping up here from time to time. I'll try to note them. And again, if you're new here, I try to title my videos pretty accurately, and I never intentionally clickbait or anything. So if you're on my channel and you look at my videos, the title usually says what it's about, so you're not one of those titles like, I can't believe what she said, where you're like, now I gotta see what this is. I won't do that to you guys. So anyway, let's get back to this. I got Zbrush open here. Let me put me in the corner. Boop. I'm gonna scale me down a little bit. I should probably put myself on this side for the video. Is that weird? I like being over here so much more. but over here is maybe less intrusive. Honestly, I just need to put the green screen back up so I can still be here but not have a box. But anyway, this is going to do for now. I'm going to minimize this. Boop. Hopefully it's still recording everything. And let's see here. Let me see something really quick. I'm going to go back to that tab. And it is getting audio. That's good. All right, let's go back. So we are going to load the tool. Quick access. I've been looking through all kinds of different files, so my quick access has changed. So let's see, we got my blue alien number 4. That's the one I'm on right now. Go to new. Got my trusty stylus here. Whoop. Drag this out. Hit T for transform. Let me see if it puts it off center again. No, it looks right. Seems correct now. I think I mirrored it last time, so like the overall volumes are in the same place. The time before, if you saw my last video, when I brought it in, it was not perfectly centered. Now, I am going to, I think I'll probably do a little bit with the symmetry on. And overall, I'm not as unhappy with this as I expected to be. I expected to have a lot more issues when I open this up again, but it's not that bad. I do want to make some proper eye shapes here, so I should probably do that. Let's see, I will go to insert, and we'll go to, let's make a sphere, and turn off perspective here. So perspective is gonna make it, it's gonna be orthographic view. So pull this up, and of course I have the actual mask turned off. And I'm going to try to roughly line this up where the eyeball is. And if I go with something round, it's going to make my life a bit easier when I go to make animatronics and so forth. However, I could ovalize this a little bit this way, and that won't hurt. Yeah, maybe I'll do that. Maybe I'll just make it kind of like egg-shaped, oblong-shaped, football-shaped. My computer fans are coming on already. They usually don't come on so soon. Maybe it's because I got the video player going at the same time. but I'm not really pushing it that hard. So anyway, I'm going to get these eyeballs kind of figured out where I want them to go. And you can turn on transparency too, just to see how deep this is setting in that eye stalk there. Now, if I have to, realistically, I can just thicken the back of the eye stalk a little bit so that the proper size eyeball will fit. It's an easy thing to cheat if I'm just doing the front of the eye, but if I want to make a little neck in there in the final version, I'm going to need a little bit of space. Not a ton, but a little bit. Transparency off. That's kind of cool. Is it big enough? I don't know. Let's get it from the top. See how this thing lines up. That's not bad. So again, this move tool, the gizmo, it's right here up at the top. So it says move, draw. Typically, like scale and rotate now are pretty much in the move. So if I want to rotate it or scale it, I can do it all from this gizmo. Now, this little guy here, it turns on the gizmo. If you've used ZBrush for a long time, this is not real new, but it's relatively new in the scheme of ZBrush. So if I turn this off, this is what the old transform tool looked like in ZBrush. Like if you wanted to move things around, you would basically like grab here and move it. And if you wanted to scale, it was like, you know, a lot of different features here to move this around. I actually haven't used this transpose tool in quite a long time. I like the gizmo because it's more similar to other 3D programs. But once you have this on, these rotate scale are really not that relevant unless you use the transform tool. So anyway, just a thing. I'm going to make sure this is actually still centered. Okay. And then the shortcut for these is Q is, let's see, Q is draw and W is move. I think E is scale, R is transform, or R is rotate, sorry. So it's like Q, W, E, R are kind of like the hotkeys for these top functions here. I never ever go click this. And typically speaking, in any software, if there's a function that I have to go click, I will try to learn the hotkey for it. Always, always. I hate having to constantly go up to the menus. And it's a thing like if you work in a production environment, doing, you know, that little movement hundreds of times a day starts to eat into your time. Like it really affects your time in the course of an 8-hour day. So anytime you can skip and just jump around to your things, like if I'm pulling out my brushes or, you know, whatever, is using hotkeys is definitely a preference. Now, at first, it may be easier just to go up to find the thing, but, you know, if you can, if I have to go to a menu once and I know there's a hotkey, I will go search it out. So anyway, let's look here. I'll stop rambling about that. Stop griping. When I see other people working and they're constantly going up to the menus for every single thing, it makes me nuts. It's hard to watch. So here we go. Getting messages here. Now I do have a Zoom meeting in about an hour. So, all right. Anyway, so we got the eye here. I'll stop rambling. Go back to my draw mode. Now I want to make this fit on both sides here. Let me actually push it back just a little bit. I want the face of this eyeball to be about the same depth, and then what I'll do is deepen the other one. So I'm going to average it out. It's about right there. Now, what I'll do is I'll go under geometry, modify topology, and then mirror and weld, and it should put right on the opposite side. Since this is mirrored, go back to my draw, and I have you can see that secondary red dot. That means symmetry is turned on. Now, a lot of today, I'm not going to be using the symmetry because I want to start adding these wrinkle details, and I don't want all the wrinkles to be perfectly symmetrical. I'll probably touch up some of these major ones, but all the little guys, I'm going to start just freehanding with symmetry turned off so we get a little bit more of an organic look. But while this is on here, on this guy, I'm going to go to my clay tool, and how I got there was B, C, and T, and that's my shortcuts to go to the clay tubes. And I'm just going to sculpt this in a bit so that we're just exposing the eyeball here. Now on the final, what I'll probably do is make like a fake eyelid that's just attached to the eyeball, and then the eyeball can like rotate boop, 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 real quick, and it'll kind of give it maybe like a you know, like a sort of a blinky mechanism, and I won't have to adhere any like skin or anything to the actual lid, which you could do, but I think I can, if I make it blink really fast, I think I can get away without doing that. But so anyway, there's kind of like the basic look here with the eyeballs. So I'm going to smooth this out a little, and whoops. Let's see. PSO. Skip this note till next time. Whoops, I did something weird. So what happens is if you hit, I think it's C or V, you can see that it changes these colors here. If I just push this back to white, it'll go back. When that first happened, I didn't understand what I did wrong, and it was like everything's just like, can't see anything now. Everything went to here just by me accidentally hitting a button, and I didn't know what I did. I didn't know how to correct it. So that happens sometimes. In Zbrush, that has happened with that color. Has done it before, and what else? There's this one called down here at the bottom. I might be hiding it right now with my face, but down here there's solo mode, which I probably am right over it right now. I'm sorry, guys. And on solo mode, there is dynamic, and if you flip that on, every time you rotate, every other tool will turn off as you rotate. And it's good if you have a really dense model or like giant model with lots of subtools and it's eating a lot of processor power just to move it around. It can be really handy for that, but it's not a thing I use regularly, and every once in a while I would accidentally turn that on and I had no idea what was going on. I thought Zbrush was messing up on me or something. So yeah, that was great. So what I'm gonna do here, ooh, that was a weird sound. Let's look. I might have a meetup on my phone. Getting messages. Interesting. I don't know exactly what that was. Very strange notification from my phone. I don't mean to put you guys on pause here, but I'm going to be doing these things kind of live, not editing. I really want to get my content flowing a little better on my YouTube here, because I like posting stuff, but I typically don't have time for super involved projects. But maybe I can post like in progress things, and you know, I actually got like pretty good feedback from the last one, even though I wasn't expecting much. But I had a few people write me and say that they liked it, so I was like, okay, cool, I will do another one. Reinforce that. All right, so I'm gonna go in here. I'm emphasizing these kind of like weird details that are on the face. These are on my original sculpt, and these I kind of want to be a little more symmetrical, so I'm going to leave symmetry on. But again, once I get into the overall wrinkles and so forth, I will turn it back off. Emphasize. I'm keep referring over to my original here because I just want to kind of capture the essence of it as much as possible, even though the shape is now going to morph a bit to compensate for the way I'm going to build this. But I want to get like these kind of initial wrinkles in here, and I think I'm going to overemphasize them just a little bit as I do this and see how it goes. That way, again, I plan on probably 3D printing this as the mold and everything, just as an experiment, see how it goes. And the more deep detail I get, the better chance it's going to come out in the castings. And the castings are going to be silicone, so they're semi-translucent, which means that you can get away with a little bit more. Let's look here. Now, like this under eye, I'm gonna even that out. But listen to my fans going. I don't think they were going this hard on my last video. Push this up and make this, pull this out. Whoa, that was more than I wanted. Oh yeah, I see what I did. B. So I'm going to do move elastic. I just ended up on elastic. So you go B for brush, M for move, and an E for elastic. And now you can see up here, my brush is move elastic. And I like this move a little more because it's kind of a little more gentle than the regular move brush. You can scale it, and you can see how there's two circles here. I'm pointing at my screen. But on the brush, you can see there's two red circles. The inner circle is where like the most effect is, and the outer circle represents the fall off of the brush. So if I go to like the, focal shift and I turn it out, then it's going to be like a lot sharper. So, and I'm pulling this menu up. You can do all this up here somewhere, but I just hit spacebar and it'll pull this menu up again with the shortcuts. That means like wherever I'm at on the screen, if I hit spacebar, I can change my brush size, focal shift, all of these features. So that's a very handy thing. So move this forward gently. Maybe that's too much. I don't know. Maybe I need to move this part back a little bit. So I don't want it to stick out too far forward ahead of the eyeballs. I want the eyeballs to be kind of protruding but not buggy. But I also want the eye stalks to be as perpendicular in the front as possible to the viewer. So, and now this is another thing where ZBrush is super handy, because if I had to do this in clay and then sculpt one and then I have to go and sculpt the other one, it would take me forever. And then the time it takes to do a quick adjustment on one, I would barely be getting started with actual clay. So there we go. It's a little more even. And then obviously there's some lumpies and stuff around here that I'm going to have to clean up. But hide the rest here. To do that hide thing, what I just did, it's Control Shift, and it's literally like with ZBrush, some of the key shortcuts, it's literally the same keys, but the phone just went off again. The order that you press them matters in the function. So like if I hit Control, it'll give me a mask like this, which means that if I mask it, I can move stuff here, but it won't move anything that's masked. I'll turn that off. To do that hide selection, it's Control and Shift. So you hit Control like you're going to do mask, and you hit Shift, and then you can select an area. Now, let me turn on this polyframe mode here, which is, so you can see there's no polygroups, which means that a polygroup is basically like a selection set within the subtool. So let me solo this here for a second. So if I go here, you see these little green spots? That's a polygroup. So if I select a thing, an area that I want to, like, let's say I want to work on these eyes and I don't want to always have to select them, I can hit Control W, and now I've got a polygroup there. Now I can turn this on and off so it looks normal, but now I've got this group, and without having to do that selection, I can basically hit Control Shift, like I'm going to make a selection, just tap this, if I do it right, and there you go, and it'll, select that piece. So it's the same subtool, all the geometry is connected. Still, like, everything's welded together. If you work in 3D space, if you unweld something that's like now two objects, this is still one object, but it gives you the ability to select different spots on here, and you can make a selection set like this, a polygroup, by even just put a mask on it, and then you hit Control W. Now you have it makes a little group which you can select by itself, real easy, and work on those pieces. Very handy, very, very, very handy. I use it all the time. And then within polygroups, there's things you can do. If you're doing hard surface modeling, you can use the polygroups and smooth by group, which means you can rough something in, sculpt it, and then create polygroups for all the different sides, and use the smoothing tool, smooth by groups, and make nice, sharp, solid planes that look like mechanical, if you want. It's how I did. I don't know. I'll show you one day. Maybe I got one right here. I did these really goofy looking helmets for a college humor series called Troopers, and let me see if I can't see what I'm looking at here, so I'm going to pull myself up on screen. So they look like this. Put me in full screen for a second. Oh yeah, my stylus is sitting on my tablet and I can't move my mouse. Here we go. So they look like this. They're real silly looking, but this was my very first project to do completely in ZBrush. The design was from the production. I literally tried to do these like really cool helmets, and they're like, no, we want it to look like this drawing we have. And one day I'll pull that stuff out so you can see my resources. 'Cause I did these helmets, and I did like their Darth Vader character called Dreadlord, and this is for the College Humor series that was on. It was on some streaming service, so it's not the old one that was on YouTube. They picked it up. Some company picked it up and they put all this money into it. It's literally called Troopers: Rise of the Budget. And they did a whole series. It was funny. It was actually really funny, but I don't think anybody got to see it because it's on some paid streaming platform that I don't think anybody uses. There are clips of it online, and I made those, some other stuff. But anyway, the whole point of that ramble was that I made all that stuff in ZBrush, and it was my first project where I made, like, I did all of my 3D modeling and concept in ZBrush, and exported everything for printing. Everything was done in ZBrush. So I didn't go to any external software to break apart the models or to remodel anything. And so like the Dreadlord helmet, it's kind of like a Darth Vader one. I have it up there. I'll pull it down sometime. Maybe I'll talk about that sometime soon on a video. Everything was done completely in ZBrush. So all the separation, how the pieces came apart, fit together, all done in ZBrush. And a lot of how I got those shapes, I sculpted them in rough, just like I'm doing with this alien head, just clay forms. And then once I started to establish where the lines and things would go, I started to polygroup everything, break off the pieces and clean them up and make them super smooth so that they looked, manufactured as opposed to sculpted, which, is hit or miss. A lot of new stuff doesn't have that old school feel. Like if you look at like the old school movies, like, Star Wars, obviously, Black Hole, anything that had armor was all, they hand sculpted the mold, so there'd be little things that were asymmetrical and stuff, which kind of gave it, there's a little nostalgia value in that. It's kind of nice. And I think that the sculptors would have made it perfect if they could. I don't think people purposely make it wonky. It's just, nature of doing something quickly and doing it by hand. So when you have the tools to do it right, I think everybody typically leans toward that. But like, where's that back here? CZ3, his face is super weird in person. Anyway, let's get back to ZBrushing time here. So we'll go back over. Anyway, that was a distraction. So turn off this thing so I can look at it, and I can change the material too. Like sometimes looking at these with different materials kind of exposes stuff that you wouldn't typically see. They're matte cap materials, and they kind of give the impression that there's lighting on them, but what's happening is it's the colors and the lighting is all based on the direction in the actual material here. So whatever direction a polygon is facing in your model is going to be represented a certain way, as opposed to, it's not trying to calculate lighting hitting it and bouncing back. It looks like that, but it's just not really what's happening. It's pretty cool. So anyway, with these matte cap materials, you can change them and sometimes drastically affect the look of what you're working on. I really like this red clay. It's like default. But anyway, so yeah, let's get back to this and see. So the eyes are real bad. I'm going to go to the standard brush, which is BST for standard. Brush. Standard is with an S, and then T is the letter they chose for that. I'm just going to push this back a little bit with eyeballs. Now, when I do a final version, this is going to be all like altered because the however I do the core, whatever I do in there for the inner skull is going to affect everything, and however I do the animatronics is going to be affected. So I will probably actually remake these little pieces here, the little eyeballs. Oh, those aren't the eyeballs, these are the eyeballs. I'm going to probably remake those in like Fusion with a whole mech system. I'll probably design all that in Fusion 360 and figure out how it's going to actually function. And then I'll punch all that stuff out of the actual model, so there's room for the mechanics inside, there's room for my head inside, there's room for the underskull. And the more underskull that I can put in here means the lighter the mask is going to be and the less silicone I'll have to use. So it's like cheaper, probably easier to wear, more comfortable, more room for servos and so forth. Now, whatever I do in here that's mechanical will probably run off Arduino, so I'm just going to program it to do like random blinks. I maybe will have an override thing that I can touch and make it close its eyes or make it blink, but I just want it to kind of have blinks here and there as I'm walking around. I just want it to randomly blink from time to time. So at the moment, that's what I'm going to do. And then maybe I'll figure out some more involved things, but it's not going to be like radio controlled or anything like that. At least not yet, or the first version anyway. Maybe it will be, but I don't think so. So anyway, let's get back to this. So because it's not going to have like a proper eyelid, I'm just going to kind of shape this a little bit and keep it smooth. And if I drag that mask tool, it re-dynameshes everything. Now, you guys will probably hear me say the same things over and over. The reason I'm going to do that is that it, for one, is going to reinforce stuff for people, you know, hopefully good habits. And I know I've got plenty of bad habits myself, but, you know, like I said, using the keyboard shortcuts and things like that, I think are important to get used to, especially if you plan on doing this in any kind of production environment. And the thing is, sometimes you don't plan on doing this in a production environment, but the better you get at it, suddenly people will start coming to you and asking you, like, hey, can you make a thing for me? And before you know it, you are now doing this in a production environment. So it's good to like walk into those situations more prepared than not. You know, it always feels weird, like going to work with people who do this all the time for their living, and it's like, hey, you're gonna work with this guy who's a badass, and yeah, hopefully you fit in all right. I've had pretty good luck, but I definitely have a bit of imposter syndrome when I get into certain situations. I'm like, should this be me doing this? I don't know. Yeah, I'm gonna overemphasize these little bumpities here a little more, and I'm not gonna worry about that texture I put on last time. It doesn't matter if I sculpt over it because I'm gonna be like going back over this and doing it again anyway. So that's probably too much right there. I'm gonna fix that one. I don't like that. I don't like that lump. So I'm gonna go back to the standard brush and make it real small. It's gonna look almost like a Damien standard, which has basically an alpha channel up here that makes it pointy. It gives you the idea of a pointy tool, and it's also inverted, which means that right now, like, I'm pushing inward on the clay, but to do that, I'm holding down the Alt key. So if I hold Alt, it'll push inward, and if I just do it normal, it like pulls the surface outward. So the Damien standard brush is inverted, which I used to hate. I used to always flip it. Like, I'd go up here and change this. So if I go to Damien standard, which is BDS, Dam standard, which is I think I mentioned this in the last video, but it's a brush that used to be like an add-on. Like, you'd have to go on the forums and download the alpha channels and set it all up. And you can see up here it says Z sub, which means that when I just draw, it pushes inward. I used to swap that to add because most of the other brushes are additive. And I was like, well, I switched this and then I felt off. So for years I swapped it back, but now it doesn't. Now I'm okay with it. I've got it mentally figured out a little better. So I'm going to emphasize the edge of this detail. So what I'm doing here is I'm basically pulling up an edge that I want to emphasize, and then I'm hitting Shift and smoothing it down just a little bit. That way it's like more emphasized, but it's not like a sharp line that it was initially. And that works really good for doing veins and so forth. It also works well if I'm doing like an inset kind of ridge thing like this, where I have like a crevice in here. I dig the hole, but then I want the hole the edge to be sharper, I'll actually come back around and drag in some of the material and smooth it back, so kind of emphasize it, but I don't want to do that there. That was just for demonstration's sake. Yeah, we're starting to get our little lines reestablished. And I don't like this table. My tablet keeps moving around on me. So I'll go in here. Let me see. Yeah, it's still working. So I'm going to go in and just kind of redraw this line here. And it's going to look a little overly strong right now, but it's, as I add detail and so forth, it'll look less severe. It's almost better to do it too much and not enough. Now with this mouth, I need to figure out how I want to accomplish this when I make it. So as I'm doing these things, I am trying to consider how I'm going to actually produce this thing. So I kind of take that into account. Like, where is underskull going to go and all this? And as of right now, I don't have that set up yet, but I'm still thinking about it. Once I set it up, then I'll really solidify some of the design. A good way to get inside mouths, now that we're looking at this, is to do that selection thing I was saying before. So it's Control-Shift, and you make your selection lasso, and if you hit Alt, it'll remove a piece, and there's my head sitting inside. But if you do this and you want to make like the inside of a mouth, it's a good way to get into those areas to do that. You know, you can select the lip or get inside and sculpt the inside of the mouth, and then, you know, turn everything back on, and now your sculpture is, you know, makes it easy to get in crevices and so forth. So these are areas where I don't want it to be totally symmetrical, but I kind of want to establish these lines a little bit. I'm going to try to establish them without establishing any major kind of like landmark creases, because I want those to be asymmetrical. So anyway, we got that for now. We can turn symmetry back on a little bit, but I'm going to turn symmetry off, and then I'm going to go in and just generically hit up some of these little crinkle spots. And by having the symmetry off, even if I emphasize the same spots on both sides, they will be slightly different, which just looks better, in my opinion, especially for something organic. You want to kind of mix it up a little bit, not have the same pieces. And a lot of this lumpy detail is going to be sort of smoothed out as I go. Like, I'll go back over and smooth it, and then I'll add the wrinkles back in. And this just, you know, every time you do that, it adds a little bit more of a natural feel. And poly groups, I mean, the actual poly count on this right now is not incredibly high for how big this is, so the detail's still relatively low. So I'm trying to keep these like first wrinkles kind of like the deeper, bigger wrinkles. And as I turn up the poly count as I go, I'll make these things more and more detailed. Now, even though I'm doing this on either side, I still want to, what I'm saying, either side. So even though I'm doing this asymmetrically, I don't want to do anything drastic on here, like give him like a big scar on his face with stitches or something, because like I mentioned in the last video, if there are multiples of this same alien on a set, I want them all to just be made out of the same mold, and then just with a little bit of paint, just alter them a little bit. But I don't want any super distinguishing marks on here that are gonna like stand out, you know, like if it's got a big scar on his face or a funny expression and there's 4 or 5 of them sitting together, you're gonna go, oh, those all came out of the same mold. But if you think about like the Mon Calamarians from the Return of the Jedi, there's a whole bunch of them on set. Probably all came out of the same mold, but they're all painted just a little bit differently. They got some different costumes, so you feel like it's all like the same, you know, the same species, but not necessarily the same copied face over and over again. So that's what I'm going for here. So yeah, I'm just doing some initial line work here, just to some basic crinkles in the face, and I'm trying to think about when this thing moves, which direction things are going to move in, and you know, get that kind of established nicely. And it's real easy to get over caught up in doing these details too early in the process. It's really, really important to figure out your forms before you start detailing, especially if you're doing this in clay. Like in ZBrush, you can get away with this a little more, but if you're doing this in clay and then you just start going crazy on all these details and then you realize there's something wrong, you just wasted a lot of time. So it's really good to just get the main shapes super solid and figured out, and then go into detailing. The detailing part is, you know, you can just zone out, put on some music, and just start adding little lines, and you know, it's real easy to just kind of get in the groove here because you're not really affecting the overall shape much. You're just kind of, you know, playing it up, adding a little bit of realism. But yeah, that's just how it goes. It's like always save the small details for later in the process. I might even be attacking this a little bit too early, but I think it's probably fine. I think all the main stuff is generally where I want it, and around the eyes is kind of like my more questionable area at the moment. So got that. Got some little wrinkles under the chin here. Again, the resolution is still a bit low for right now, so these are just kind of initial shapes. What I'll do is I'll turn everything up and then sharpen what needs to sharpen and get some finer detail in there, and probably lessen the bumpiness. It looks really, really bumpy, but when you cast this in silicone, these bumps are gonna be not nearly as visible. If you look at just like your normal skin on your hand or something, it doesn't look all that wrinkly. You don't see all the little like fine details. But if you take a casting of your hand and add a plaster that's totally opaque, because your skin has some translucency. So if you take a casting out of plaster, I'm looking up here because I think I've got one that I can grab, and you look at just the amount of crazy little lines and crackly patterns and all the scars that are on your hands that you barely see when you see it in person, it's nuts. So when you sculpt something, especially for something silicone, it's almost like you have to consider that pattern. You know, overplay it a little bit. It's nice to have some actual life casts around to look at. I got one of me around here somewhere. I've got a few of them. But when you look at them up close and you can see all the pore detail and all that stuff, you realize how much actual texture is on a face. Even like a pretty smooth face has more texture than you might think. So yeah, always good to kind of play that up a bit. It's 10 o'clock now. Got this Zoom meeting sort of soon, so I'll probably do this for a little bit longer. Keep rambling. But yeah, so I'll play this up and try to get rid of some of these things that are too symmetrical here in the front. I'm going to smooth this down and just like re-sculpt in some of these details a little bit. And sometimes when you're establishing these little like lines, you'll find some spots that you want to emphasize more. So you like draw in a line, and then let's say you want to, you know, kind of puff up some of the wrinkles a little bit. There's multiple ways to do that. You can sculpt it puffed up, or you can go to the Inflate Tool, which is B-I-N, and kind of just go over just real gentle, and you know, lift up some of those areas just a tad, and it kind of helps you know, make it feel a little bit more realistic. You can see it's pretty subtle. You could go crazy, you know, I could just pump it up all gross, but I don't want to do that. I'm just going to go a couple subtle passes. And again, these things, I'm going to go over this multiple times, so it's probably going to, you know, what you see here, by the time I get to the end of this, a lot of this is probably not going to be there. I like the little happy accents I get as I like noodle around on this. So what I'll do is I'll noodle, and find things I like and keep them, and things I don't like I'll like just delete them or, you know, resculpt them out. But this is, I'm using the Inflate tool. I'm going to turn this down really small. And you can see it kind of works a little bit like the standard brush, but it's just a little bit better. You can see some spots here where, you know, some detail could be sharper. And where these like compound creases are, you're going to get wrinkles that go in all these directions. So, you know, it's not bad to like just go across things. And you can always use reference, and I recommend using reference. I think a lot of people, new artists in particular, seem to get hung up on using reference. They just want to like do it on their own. Like they want to know that they did it, which I get. But if you use reference, you're not copying anything. You're just looking at it so you can see how stuff goes. And the more you do that and you understand what's happening, it will help you in the future to use less reference if that's a thing. I don't think it's bad one way or the other. You know, if you go grab reference, that's normal. Like some of my favorite artists ever use tons of reference. And again, the more you draw anything or sculpt things or draw from life, you can learn and build this library of your own, so you kind of understand what is happening. Now, with that said, speaking of like building a library, there's, you know, people will think about like drawing, how do I say this? So, you know, you see those books like how to draw horses or how to draw faces, or all of, you know, these books are really specific, and I think people buy those and think they have to like to learn to draw a face or to learn to draw a horse or to learn to draw cats. I think that's not the best approach. I think that mindset actually slows down your improvement as an artist. I think it's the most important is to learn the fundamentals first, and, you know, learn real basic drawing technique, like, and actually learn it. Don't just like go through the things like, oh, I drew some cubes and shading. Like, understand what's happening with those things. Like, if you understand perspective, you know, drawing in perspective, and can draw cubes in different perspectives and draw a sphere in perspective, and then draw a sphere or a cube or some other shape in perspective with lighting, and understand how the lighting works and how, you know, how to delineate all the surfaces based on where lights are. That is so much more important than going looking at a book on how to draw cats. Now, once you can do those things, drawing a cat becomes real easy. You're like, oh, it's just figure out the shapes, the perspective, and you can, you know, pretty much draw anything. So sometimes like that fundamental stuff is way more important. I see lots and lots and lots of artists that just practice drawing eyeballs or practice doing this, that, and the other. Myself included. I did plenty of that when I was younger. But once you start learning the fundamentals, you can start to draw anything. Now, you might go look for reference, but reference doesn't mean anything if you don't kind of understand why the reference looks the way it looks. So if you look at a thing, look at wrinkles, and, you know, if you just go in and draw like the lines, it's not going to look like your reference, even though you're using reference. You got to understand that light is hitting one part of the wrinkle, there's shadow under one part of the wrinkle, maybe some skin flap is casting a different shadow on the face. You know, understand where your light is coming from, how the light is interacting with your surface material, what the fine surface elements are doing. Is it reflective? Is it kind of a matte finish? And what causes reflective in matte finish? All those things are important. And once you understand those, then anything that has that type of look, you'll understand it, and it makes it easier to draw it. It makes it easier to draw anything once you understand those things. So fundamentals are super important for doing artwork. You know, I like see people that just want to get in and be awesome. I'm like, you know, they're trying hard to draw cars or whatever, but they don't put any work into like that real basic kind of initial knowledge. But, you know, I would say learn those things, fundamentals, and then After you get those, then start learning anatomy or whatever. Draw lots of stuff, and your combination of all the things you've drawn and observed, plus your understanding of why they look the way they look, it's going to make it just way easier to draw whatever you want. You don't have to think like, oh, I can't draw eyes or I can't draw hands. Like, yeah, you could draw anything. Doesn't matter. You can draw anything. Doesn't matter because you understand all the fundamentals. So anyway, that's my rant for right now. As I'm sitting here drawing my little wrinklies around here, trying to think about which way his little lip is going to move, and overemphasizing stuff, because once this is in silicone, again, a lot of these wrinkles are going to be way less noticeable. So I'm kind of going a little slightly heavy here. There's one of these matte cap materials kind of has some subsurface scattering, like this one. Like if I turn it on this is probably more what it's going to look like as a silicone piece. So you can see the details much reduced, greatly reduced. I don't know what I'm saying. There's like a kind of a bone material. Again, nice to bounce around and look at these. One of the really good ones is the Skeletor. Look at that. I like the clay. They have a green, like this one, kind of looks like Weld clay. This looks very much like the clay I sculpted the original mask in, which is probably on here somewhere. God, I'm getting a lot of messages right now. I bet they're getting ready to do that droid meetup. Let's see. This is my life, guys, so I'll hear messages constantly. People writing stuff. Sorry, I don't mean to make these stop in the middle of my video, but you can hear my phone's going nuts. A lot of times people will be like, why don't you write me back, or you check my messages or whatever, and usually my phone is making sounds like that all day long, and I just do what I'm doing right now, and I pretty much ignore it unless I'm stopped somewhere or on the toilet or any of those number of places where I can actually take a minute to look at it. So, oh God, do you hear it? So anyway, maybe I'll get this to a good stopping point today. Actually, I think a small version of this I could probably have pretty soon. I might have to do a third session just to touch up a few things, but yeah, I think by maybe this afternoon or tomorrow morning I can get one of these printing here. I'm gonna actually turn the symmetry back on for a second. Maybe. There we go. I was hitting the wrong button. And then I'm gonna emphasize these little ear flaps just a little bit. And these ears might actually move to coincide with my own ears a little more, but I kind of like where they're at. Let's see. This little thing up here is ugly. So I'm going to go back to, excuse me, my move tool. And I'm going to just gently push this down a little bit closer to me. Probably end up resculpting most of this anyway down here, but just get it aligned a little better. And because this is going to be made around my core, I can do this however I want. But I do want it to be pretty even thickness all the way up to the edge. And push this in a little bit, just so it doesn't be as deep around my back. Now, another thing too is making this thinner really saves a lot of material, which isn't a huge deal, but silicone's expensive, so the more I don't use in places where I don't need it, the better. So I'll figure this out. Now I want it to go down far enough so that if I wear something that reveals some of the front of my neck or whatever, it's looks correct, but it's also thin enough that it's pliable, so when I move my head, it doesn't crinkle in weird ways, and it's really fitted to me so that it'll just moves a lot better. So this is actually going to come down probably a bit further once, like maybe to like there, once it's all done. Maybe I'll just go ahead and move it around right now. Come out there, and you want it to come down far enough everywhere so that it's, you know, like I said, if your costume moves or stuff overlaps, you don't have like, you know, if you're wearing something over your shoulder, it's almost better if it comes over the edge of the mask a little bit and then doesn't line up and then causes bunching right here. So, you know, stuff to consider. And then if you want it shorter, you can always trim it, but it's way harder to add this back on. So I'd rather add just a little too much lengthwise around here than not enough. Whoop. Pull this upward. And I'm using that move elastic tool. So it's pretty fun. Now back to the Damien standard. I'm going to turn the wrinkles back off again because I'm going to start, you know, adding some kind of like neck wrinkles. And I definitely don't want these things to be mirrored. I'm going to smooth this a little bit and then like re-emphasize because I think I have some leftover neck wrinkles from when I started that are a little too symmetrical. And I want them to definitely not read like I just mirrored everything. And all that surface texture, again, I can remake that real easy, so not a big deal. And this goes back to that whole thing about figuring out forms before you add detail. Is, you know, like right now I just had to smooth out some little surface detail, which I did last week, like a couple days ago, just for demo purposes. I wasn't, you know, trying to establish anything, so it doesn't matter to me at all. And that's another thing too to be that really helps with just about everything I do, is not treating everything so precious. You know, if I do something and it's really good, but then there's some aspect that's wrong that I have to change, I don't just hang on to that. I used to, like when I was younger, that was one of the things I learned about doing art, is you put a lot of work into something, especially like a painting. It's all this detail beautiful, but your composition's wrong. Painting's no good, even if you put a ton of work into it. So being able to just throw out stuff that you've worked hard on just so that you can make the overall thing better is a good skill to get. And it's hard because, especially when you're first starting out and you haven't made a lot of stuff and you're just starting to, you know, do artwork or be, you know, have a creative expression, it's really easy to feel like everything you make is like the best thing you've made, and it probably is. But you know, if you got that far, you can do it again. So if, you know, to be able to look at it objectively and just like, you know what, I painted these mountains beautifully and all my trees are perfect, but the composition is terrible, and then paint over a big chunk of your painting that you worked really hard on. It's hard to do. It's very hard to do. But once you can do that, your artwork will improve like really giant increase, huge increase in what you're able to pull off. I think that's one of the key things, is just being able to like, nope, doesn't look good. No matter how hard I work, spend a month on this thing, doesn't look good. Let's just paint over a section. Be able to do that, it's important. Same with sculpting. If you're doing a clay thing and you've done all this texture detail on the face, and then you realize that, yeah, it would be cool if, you know, the chin was different, and just be able to like cut off the bottom jaw and move it, and that's a very strong thing. Watch some of the really good sculptors online that do time lapses, and watch how much they will change a piece and just not give a damn. That's huge. Okay, I'll stop saying that, but big, super important thing. So anyway, still going, establishing these creases. Now, the way this mouth is going to flex, I picture all this meaty stuff kind of going in like a regular mouth, where it can move in a lot of directions. So it's going to start getting like, you know, the creases along the lip here. Let's see if I can establish the edge of a lip a little bit. Haven't really done that carefully yet. This is something I could probably do a symmetry on, but It's okay. That's another thing too, is like people will complain about sculpting in ZBrush, how it looks like. It looks like a sculpt in ZBrush. You can sculpt in here from the beginning with no symmetry on, just like you're doing with clay, and sculpt the whole thing. People do that, and that's a really good way to make it look less digital, is by just sculpting the whole thing from scratch, and don't use symmetry, don't use any helpers, and just sculpt like you're sculpting with clay. And it's easy. You can save different versions just in case you hate what you've done. It's kind of awesome. So anyway, this is a little bit of lip. This is kind of funky right here, but we'll go back in. This is, again, my clay sketch mode. Actually, it's probably better I don't have symmetry on in this, because it can get these little things to not read so goofy. Yeah, a little bump right there. Terrible. I'll have to come back to this because, let's see, what time is it? 10:18. Okay, I'm going to go in about 5 minutes here. I'm going to go about 5 minutes. Yeah, and then, like, again, with the thing I've been trying to put on my videos about the topics changing from time to time. I've got so many random things I want to cover, and I can't always do stuff like this. And even when I do stuff like this, just posting these things kind of live is way easier for me, which means if I do this, I can put up more content on my channel. But to edit things and put something together carefully, and some of my projects take months to do, and trying to like keep tabs of all the little videos I take along the way is can be really difficult. And I like to do them, but it's tricky. So in the meantime, for filler, I will probably do a lot more of this kind of stuff, and other videos. Like tomorrow morning, I'm going to get up at like 4:30 in the morning and go drive out to Mount Baldy and run. And I would like to get out there early because it's easier to find parking. And right now, with all the stuff going on, it's I think it's more there's less chance of me running into people. Like, I don't want to have to deal with crowds and so forth. So the earlier I get there, the better. So I'm going to run Mount Baldy. If you guys watch my channel for any amount of time, you've probably seen some other videos from up there. It's one of my favorite spots locally, and I'll probably take some video of that. So totally unrelated to ZBrush, but all that running and everything is very, very connected to doing, suit performance and creature work. All that running is really, really important for that. So that's definitely a cool thing. Oh, look at this. My wife's got some food here for me. Whoa, breakfast. Thanks, hon. That's awesome. Got a sandwich. So yeah, so I'll probably be doing more of those kind of videos too, just for filler. Some people like them. I'm into that kind of stuff, and this is the GordonTarpley channel, and I feel like I need to stop worrying as much. Just post about whatever I'm doing from day to day. So I might have 10 ZBrush videos in a row, but then I might review a hotel room, or like go run somewhere, or just take some video at some spot that I'm visiting, or unbox a leaf blower or something, which I've done, which I have video of, so I'll post that soon. Random stuff. But again, I'll try to never clickbaity. My hair is strange noise outside. Oh, it's a helicopter. It's weird. It's like there's a helicopter outside, but it sounded almost like my computer fan was starting to go crazy. Wow, that was good. So, so yeah, anyway. A little further along with this guy. I think I'm going to call it right now. I'm going to switch to this one ahead of time because I never do that. So, me, full screen. There I am. So anyway, whether it's entertaining or not, I don't know. But it's one of these things that I can do. I can just turn on the recorder while I'm working on stuff and ramble away. So I'm gonna continue doing these, but it's not gonna be my only type of video, so don't worry about that. I am going to eat my sandwich before my Zoom meeting here in a few minutes, and I should be back. Probably do another one of these, maybe even tonight or tomorrow. Just get it posted, and then that way anybody who's really interested can see the whole process, and maybe at the end I'll like edit together the key moments and put together like a highlights video. But otherwise, it's just gonna be me, working away on this, and then yeah, I'm gonna get this thing printing and do my printer review of the Nova 3D resin printer. Probably, what is today? Saturday, maybe Tuesday. I'll try to do that. I think so. And then I've got some stuff I printed on there that I'm gonna do an assembly video of a little droid that I printed from Dave Moog, which is really cool. So so yeah, that's it for right now. I'm gonna get out of here. Thanks for stopping by, guys. Hopefully it's entertaining in some way. And I will talk to you kids soon. Later!